Well, welcome to These Lads Are Mental. Azhaan, have I pronounced that correctly?
Azaan, but that's close enough.
Gary, have I got that one right? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, call me Gaza instead. Yeah,
Aye, mate, that's better. Gaz and Gaza.
Gaza, Gaza.
First time ever we've got two Gary. First time ever we've had two Garys on the show, have we?
Yeah.
I don't know, mate. Can't remember. No
Uh,
idea.
We've had a Gary. There's certainly not a name.
We've had two Azans, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually hanging out with another Azaan recently.
Oh, yeah.
Is it a
That was
bloke?
only a joke, but aye.
I've been looking for someone with the same name. I'm originally from India, right? So I was talking to some mates in India, and they was telling me that apparently my name is super common, but in my entire lifetime, I have not come across anyone with the same name.
Oh, really?
I'm like, are they just saying that to take the piss, or like, I mean, they said it pretty seriously. Who's to say?
Well, the Garys aren't as popular, mate. I think it's one of those names that's always a meme on social media that's dying. So partly proud, partly embarrassed, one of those ones.
Hence the nickname.
Sharon and Gary, right?
Ah, Sharon and Gary, I don't know the way out, man.
Shazza and Gaza.
Gaza and Gaza.
Neil always reminds you of like an accountant, you know? It's like if you had an accountant or something, it's like his name would be Neil. But I do think Neil Armstrong, that's my only claim to fame. But when I was in primary school, there was a guy called Mohammed, and his surname was called Mohammed, believe it or not. So he was Mohammed.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so guess what his nickname was?
What?
Eminem.
Oh, nice. Nice.
But yeah, so it's funny with names. Yeah, and like I'm not a very universe person, but you know, sometimes you see 7 to 7, then you see 11 to 11, and then I started seeing that in the sequence a few years ago, and then I started finding my name, like you, Azan. Like I didn't have anyone that really came across my sphere with Neil, and then all of a sudden it was like 3 Neils in a week, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? But apparently, it's the universe telling you you're still not listening if you keep seeing your name.
Right.
But is that also not, what's it called? There's a name for that effect. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to buy a new car, well, I don't know, say a Volkswagen Golf, and then you just start noticing them everywhere. But really, what's it called again? There's a name for it. There's a name for the effect. I can't remember. It's something effect.
There's a name.
You have to look out for orange Camrys. There are so many orange Toyota Camrys.
Don't
Like,
say that. We're going to say them now.
no,
That's it, I'll
you
get
are.
that.
I've been cursed with this for the last 2 years, all right? Like,
There is
it's such a weird, it's like Volkswagen, fair enough. You see a Golf pretty often, but it's like an orange Toyota Camry. There's so many. I saw 3 yesterday. I saw 3.
Yeah, I think I've ever seen one, but I'll probably say about 5 this week. Now that you've said that.
Yeah, that's right.
We did a training on that before, on sales training years ago, and they actually taught us that that's actually a thing. So it's our brains can only something like it's like 130 short-term memory bits at any given time that we can only hold in that short memory, and that's why people go orange Camry. That now goes into your 130, and then it stays there for I can't remember how long the time was. And so we learned this from a sales perspective, as in,
Yeah.
you know, it seems so simple and basic, but if you just lay those seeds with people, it will literally stay in their memory. So, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
report back next week and see if we found any. But
I think it's called, was it Boder Meinhof phenomenon?
that sounds familiar.
There's something like that. There's a name for it anyway. Well, aye. You basically see something, or someone mentions something that he's mentioned, as Anne's mentioned, it, orange Toyota Camry, and that'll be us doomed.
It's a smells. Smells apparently have a trigger more so with negative emotions for some reason. Most
What
people
does?
smells.
First said snails. All right, smells. Right, okay.
Smells.
Then a right rabbit hole there.
No, like it's funny. I have a few of them that I can go straight to. My granny's perfume. I don't know. Like I always like if someone wears something similar, I always go, "Oh, it reminds me of my granny." But that is obviously a positive. It's not negative.
You enjoyed wearing it, Neil. That's right.
You're not supposed to say that. The other one I had was I had a stomach bug once, and there was like jasmine. There was a jasmine like plant near that window, and every time I smell jasmine, I just think like I like this. Like I did like the smell of jasmine, but it reminds you of when I was real sick that time.
Aye.
Anyway, we digress. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining. Let's just get stuck in. So, Gary, maybe we'll start with you. Can you tell us about ReachOut's mission and the work that you guys do? And of course, Azan's here as well. So maybe a little bit about the young people that you support and the challenges that they face.
Yeah, sure. So Reach Out kind of was born actually about 25 years ago out of a Triple J hack, believe it or not, from someone who'd experienced some pretty serious mental health issues. And it's progressed really quickly to be kind of like the digital leader in mental health for young people in the country. And it's really easy to explain. I really like the philosophy is we kind of help people when they need help in their moment, and we make them feel better about who they are and in their place in the world, no matter where they are. Part of our ethos, I suppose, is to help them with their everyday challenges and set them up, for a better word, to equip them with the strategies they need for whatever they're dealing with. And one of the biggest things I like about ReachOut and leading this organisation is young people love talking to people they don't know anonymously because they open up, and that's that stigma-free opportunity. And we have peer workers who are people with lived experience who in essence will chat to them via text. It's called peer chat. And they talk about anything, right? It can be anything from, you know, having relationship problems right through to the fact they can't sleep at night because of stressful exams, right through to some pretty serious topics about their life. Big one at the moment is loneliness, for example, or social isolation. But what's cool about it is they could be in the school, they could be in the bathroom, they could be in the toilet, they could be anywhere, and they're just texting. So they get that direct live advice, and they connect with someone who may have experienced that exact same issue. So that relationship is almost formed immediately with a young person, which is super cool.
Wow, that's amazing. And is it anonymous? Like, as in the person you're speaking to, can you speak to that same expert or support again, or do you just get kind of into the mix, I suppose, with whoever's online?
Yeah, look, it's anonymous. What we find is people use our service. They often come back, but it's for usually a different topic. So we don't try and get an attachment to a particular person. Rather, we have that philosophy that all our peer workers have that ability to be able to use content or lived experience to be able to talk to that young person via text, or we refer them to where they should go. So if we can't help them, I think one of the best beauty about the mental health sector is there's so much going on. We usually can find the right place where they fit if we can't help them. And anonymity is really important, right? So besides parents and carers, which is often, believe it or not, young people still talk to their parents about how they're feeling. The next kind of step, if they're not getting that listening, is to go straight to an anonymous chat with someone who's real.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can see how I think the anonymous side of thing is not just for children, but I think for everyone, because everyone, I think one of the biggest fears people have is being judged in it. So I think
Yeah.
if you remove that, then it removes that sort of doorway into being able to speak your mind. It's a massive part of it.
Yeah.
What I like about that as well, because I struggle. I have depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. And what was going through my head is you were explaining that, let's say you're in school, you can just nip to the toilet, message someone and maybe get a bit of assurance, because sometimes when you're in that moment, it's hard to get away from it and then to get that immediate help. So I think that's you've certainly hit on the nail on the head there with that kind of thing. In terms of, you mentioned kind of boys, I mean, how is that factoring with the youth just generally, like across all genders? Are you seeing a difference between boys and girls, or any other types of gender? And also, you said 25 years ago. I imagine things have changed drastically since the day that it was born. Now, you mentioned loneliness was a bit of a surprise to me, because you think kids being lonely seems, not unfathomable, but like you think. But then when you also think about this connection and disconnection, maybe it does make sense. Has there been a correlation between those two?
Yeah, look, when we often do lots of research with young people. So, young people at ReachOut, they design our policies, they represent us to government, and they help us with kind of the most proactive and reactive type of content that's going on in young people's lives. The last time we researched them, social isolation was number one. Number two was the cost of living. And number three was, believe it or not, climate change, right? So when you talk about what's on the front centre of young people's minds, they may be socially engaged, but online, for example, because their community or tribe doesn't exist in that face-to-face world. And there's a lot of research around to say that's actually okay if you're finding your own people online. Just because you talk to them through a different medium, digital, it doesn't mean you're any different from having a face-to-face conversation with someone. However, that loneliness is quite instinctive. And we still think it's a kind of a landover from COVID, that social isolation. So I watched a peer chat the other day, so I have the beauty of being able to see online the texts that are going on. And we had a young bloke, and it's quite consistent between men and women, who said, once upon a time before COVID, he was the most extrovert person you could ever meet, in lots of groups, did lots of things, was really social. COVID came along and he kind of lost his way. and he just wanted help, right? And when you watch the text going back and forth, the peer worker is saying, like, talk to me more about the why. And he actually said, no one's ever asked me why I feel lonely. I just say I'm lonely, but lonely means lots of things, right? So he lost lots of friends. His family wasn't talking to him. And he became an introvert really quickly, where he would stay in his home almost 24/7 and did his uni course online, right? But in essence, created an own bubble, like his own, we call it self-protection, he went into. By the end of that chat was 45 minutes almost. By the end of that chat, he actually said, I'm going for a walk, right? Now, you and I might go, is that success? If I'm really honest with you, to get him out of the house and realize that actually going for a walk will just help clear his thoughts was our biggest, I don't know, success factor in that conversation. So, you know how we talk about being better in the moment. We got him to walk outside. That's a massive tick, right? But that loneliness, I think, is really different for everyone. You know, you can connect online and have your tribe. You can. It's just how a young person's feeling. And the other bit I end on is the cost of living. Everyone thinks the cost of living hits people with mortgages, right? We know this, but the secondary impact is young people have to study. Young people are working 3 jobs just because of the cost of living. Therefore, their stress and their studies impacted significantly. So then there's a big question mark about what's the next generation of young people going to look and feel like if they can't even finish their uni, their TAFE, their apprenticeship, their traineeship, because they have to work 3 jobs. You know, one young woman said she works in KFC, she works in Target, and she works at the uni coffee shop just to pay for her boarding with 6 other people in the house she lives in.
Wow.
We tend to forget that factor, right? You see on the news, oh, mortgage is going to hit parents because, you know, they can't afford their house. Actually, it's hitting the younger generation. And that cost of living impacts loneliness. It impacts how people spend their money. They don't go out.
It's also when you're at that age, I mean, should you even have to be thinking about those things? Like, I mean, has that changed? Because I don't remember thinking about mortgages or things like that when I was that age or your future. You didn't really. I remember getting my first job when I was like 14, 15, but that was really just my mum trying to get me out of the house and to have a bit of extra income. I wasn't certainly thinking about my future, no way near. Not even when I was going to college, I still didn't really have to worry about that. Like, are the worries kind of coming earlier in our, I suppose, development as humans, do you think now, Gary?
They are. Someone asked me the other day, what is the difference from you when you grew up compared to now? The world has completely changed, right? I didn't have the digital technology young people have now where they can connect. They can get live feed news 24/7. The minute they wake up, they're watching the news. So they're actually more informed than probably you and I are on what's going on around the world. And people, I think, tend to think young people are naive. They don't know what they're doing. In fact, if you ask them about world politics or what's going on in the world, they could probably answer you much better and clearer than the generation above them, just because they're connected so much more. But that also means they're exposed to so much more. So the triggers around them are like, you know, I always picture the bubble around a young person and what their phones or their digital life is telling them is so different to what I may have experienced. But it's that same resilience building, right? They just have to find the resilience to actually deal with what's in their world, which is very different to you and,
And that's
you know,
probably,
Yeah,
that's a
one thing I always speak about with people in my workplace, I talk about environment dictates performance, and I do think sometimes, like when people of our age or older grew up, our environment was home life, work life, maybe your neighbourhood. That was pretty much it, really. But your neighbourhood could be all sorts of people and all the rest of it. But now, a huge part of your environment, yes, home life still, but then you've got obviously school or uni, whatever it might be. But then now, because of the mobile phone, you can almost create, you pretty much create your own environment from scratch. So if you went through all of 4 of our phones, from, say, we all use Instagram, we all use YouTube, and we all have, say, Google or whatever sort of search browser. If you went through what we look at day to day, who we follow, what information we consume, ultimately over a course of 24 hours, you sleep 7 or 8, you're maybe working like on a heavy project, 4 hours, say, then you're doing bits of admin here or there, chatting to people in your work. But a large chunk of that day, whether it's doom scrolling or whether it's genuine education, whatever it might be, or for work, you're pretty much, that's the people you end up knowing, liking, trusting, good or bad, the information you're consuming, whether it's positive or negative. So if you go through a lot of like young people's social media, where it's full of politics, or it's full of sport, or it's full of people spouting good, bad, and different information. That is effectively what you're dealing with when it comes to the loneliness, or because they feel, some of them feel super connected to that, but then when they come out of that environment, they realise no one around them is on the same boat, and like you suggested earlier on, the only people in the same boat is those online. So you just go back to that because like this is what I like, but the only way they can connect, if they go back to their mum and dad, it's almost like, how do I talk to them about this? They're not going to be interested in this. And I think it's important on two ways. One, parents, teachers, mates, and all that, meet them on their level of like finding out what they're genuinely interested in and how they can facilitate it in maybe a better environment. And then at the second thing would be probably being a bit more, I don't want to say policed, because some of these kids, I say youth, but some of them could be 17. I mean, they're well capable of looking after themselves. But some of the things people are following or just getting gravitated towards is just misinformation or nonsense, or people spouting stuff that's sending them down, who am I to say what's right or wrong, but maybe away from what they actually intended to be doing, because it's very easy. You don't know what to believe, especially now with AI. You don't know what's right, what's wrong, and it only takes a couple of things from an algorithm to be feeding you multiple people with the same viewpoint, and you automatically think, well, everybody's saying it. And then there's somebody across the room with a different environment and they're on a little mobile phone, and they're like, well, everyone's not saying that on my side. And it's because the algorithm's feeding them what they're just naturally what they were touching on, and before you know it, they're, I don't want to say, I'm saying brainwashing just because I don't have a better word, but that your environment just starts to dictate that performance, and then you start to feel, well, am I the only one that thinks this? These people online, and it can manifest in other ways. You can get angry at the world because like, oh, no one gets it, and then that has a whole host of other. It is crazy. I mean, the mobile phone and internet, digital age, AI has got tons of positives. So I'm not going to shit on it because it's allowing us to do this right now. There's millions of you can build businesses, young people, entrepreneurs, younger than ever, making fortunes, helping the world, making impact, connecting with people all over the world. But there's definitely that whole creating your own environment. I think it's really important for people to maybe unfollow the shit that they go. Like you said, you wake up, mate, and you get the news available to you. Even if it's not the news, the one thing I changed personally was I used to wake up and check my phone straight away. I didn't look at news or anything, but I might get a text message that just irritated me,
Yeah.
and it fucked my whole morning. And I'm like, like it could be the simplest thing, or it could have been. It very rarely was like a really, oh, congratulations, Gary, or well done. Here's a good news. It was always something that made me stressed about something that was coming up in a few hours that I couldn't do anyway, couldn't control anyway, or something from back home in the UK that made me worry. So I was like, I'm just not going to check it. I want to go enjoy my morning, spend time with who I'm supposed to spend time with, and then when the time's right, check what I'm supposed to check. And young people and adults are the same. Phone goes off, alarm goes off in the room, turn the alarm off, check the notifications, and there you go. You're down a rabbit hole, and your whole days.
Yeah.
I mean, all over
Yeah.
the place. It's wild. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would say on top of the trouble with that is like we're adults and we have objectivity and our education and our smarts, and even it's hard for us. And then, like, I've got a 3-year-old. It's even harder when you try and instill that on, the young kids. So, and especially when they grow up, even to teenage years where they're not in your control for most of the day, like daycare they are. Whereas the minute my son comes home, he always asks, "Can I have a show? Can I watch a show?" And if you keep it away from him, he's fine. The minute you introduce it, like we could take the TV away or the screen away for a week and he's fine. The minute you introduce a teeny tiny bit of it, then it's meltdown when you take it back off. And it's this constant battle of how do you keep their focus away from that? And as I said, you can get them in really good patterns, but the minute you slowly introduce it, it forms bad habits again. And like, he's 3, he knows how to swipe up, he flicks through my photo album. Like, in my mind, this seems silly to think about it, but I can't understand how he's not going to remember this period of his life. I don't remember anything when I was 3 or below, but I don't know, this seems outrageous to think, but I feel like their brains are evolving so much that maybe their memories will, because I see him, how he interacts, how specific and tactile he is at this age. Like, I didn't have a mobile phone until I was 13 or 14, and it was a flip phone, and whereas he's got all these cognitive skills already. So it kind of like I'm so worried about it because I'm imagine when he's 18, what is that going to be like? I mean, do you see cases of that where this overactivity at these very young ages is then, I mean, we probably won't know the results for another 10, 15 years, but is this happening right now? Do you find like the technological age, is it already impacting kids of 16, 17, 18 years?
There's some research that came out of Canada last week that said at the age of 5, children can open a mobile phone. I'd argue it's probably 3 or 4 to your point, Neil, but at the age of 5, kids can open phones, they can send emoji text messages, and they can start to game. So games like just playing those really simple games. At the age of 8, they're using AI and they're coding. So we know they actually teach coding in year 3 and year 4 now, right? They teach kids coding, right? At the age of 10, in Canada, kids are using AI in their conversational text on their phones, right through to learning how to use AI in their everyday life. So if that's the generation alpha you're talking about, so that's like the next digital age, and you've got 10-year-olds using AI and pretty savvy about how they use it, then what's the digital age going to look like? Now, there's lots of positive to that, of course. There's to your point, Gary, there's lots of negatives to social media, for example. 100%, we don't take that away. Parents in particular, there's been some devastating consequences for parents of kids who've been on social media. Young people tell us the same. But what's really interesting is, and Azhaan will vouch for this, young people tell us that, first of all, they're digital natives. Digital is their world and it will be their world, and you can never turn back the clock, right? So that's the first thing. It's not like, trying to change something that it is impossible to change. So then about 73% of young people research said they go on their social media to get mental health support, right?
Yeah.
43% of them went on to get professional mental health support. So they actually get the information they need through their platforms to try and help them. Now that's getting younger and younger, right? 13, 14-year-olds are searching. And Gary can't hit the nail on the head. The point is, though, the information that they're reading could have devastating consequences because it's not all true and correct, especially the younger group versus the older group, which is around the 16. That fact check, they're not naive. They do check what they read. But when you've got algorithms feeding you about what you like, then you're only going to see what you like. It's kind of the Trump impact, right? You love Trump, you're going to get Trump. The biggest thing we went to the social media companies and said with the social media ban is you need to stop the algorithms and give young people control back so they control what they see. And do you know what? Really super simple to do, and we know they can do it. But they won't. So then the next stage is stop the infinite scrolling. So stop making it so sticky where people just scroll. And in fact, there's a lot of research that suggests, people with ADHD in particular, it's one of their coping mechanisms is to scroll. But we're saying, actually, you need to stop after 20 minutes. And so stop that. More research into mental health about the actual impact on social media, because there's actually around the world, globally, there's not a lot to suggest if it's good or bad. It's just the local research that's being done to say we have to embrace what it is, right? And I think to your last point about, is it having an impact much younger? The social media ban's coming in, we know this. If you think about taking away phones from kids or platforms from kids, we already know young people are finding VPN opportunities. So you can VPN tunnel bear across to the States and connect onto a social media platform. I did it myself. It's dead easy. Or they're going to go to the dark web and get on other unregulated platforms. And in Brazil, only yesterday, Discord is in a lot of trouble because of what's happening on there in regards to sextortion and other issues. So in one way, a group of kids will stay off it because their parents will make sure they do. Another group will go around it. And then you've got a whole group that's going to hit the age of 16 with no resilience about how to use social media. So it's that, you fall over, you get yourself back up and you keep running. In the social media world, we all make mistakes. We go into things we shouldn't, but we learn from it and we move forward. We're about to take a slice, I would say, from the age of 10 to 16 away from kids in this country. So that connection to community, gone. That connection for rural, remote areas of the country, gone. The help seeking for LGBTQ, First Nations and marginalised communities, gone for that particular age group, which is just a real shame.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, is the government? I mean, that was a good move, to bring in the social media ban. But is there any plans afoot to kind of plug that gap, Gary, in terms of, okay, if we there's going to be a void left over. I mean, what do we do next? Is it get kids back out into the streets, the playgrounds? Like, any plans afoot for that?
It's really interesting. There's Black Dog Institute just released some really good information about, and I think we all see it, but I think you've got to take it into context. Young people are online, but they're not online 24/7. They're connected online 24/7, but they do things outside scrolling their social media, right? They do go outside, they do interact with their communities. What we're suggesting to government, and this is, I would say to you, the first time mental health sector in the country is very much all on the same page, is we need to build digital literacy in kids much younger in schools, right? So early childhood right through to primary schools, that's the starting point. We need to educate parents on digital literacy. So I asked a group of parents the other day, do you know where your safety features are on Instagram? Almost half of the audience said, no idea. No idea. Do you know how to turn off certain things? No idea. Because the platforms hide them. Insta's doing a little bit better at the moment about putting them up front. But there's that whole digital literacy component that we need to educate parents and carers on so they equip their young people to do better, and also to know what's not great if you are going to go hunting online. So what are the things to stay away from? And I know it sounds really simple, but it is that engagement with kids at a much younger age to help fill that void, because we just have to work with it now, right? We just have to work with, there's a ban. So what's the strategy? The strategy is to educate, but probably from the age of 5, which is just like even crazy just saying that, but it's true.
Yeah,
At
because
the
they
age of
haven't
five.
even, at 5, most kids haven't even started school yet. So it's like before they even get to school, we're having to train them. Well, why don't we bring in a young person? Azhaan, how are you? Uh,
Where did he come from?
definitely the youngest person on this call by far.
Exciting.
So what is it? Maybe you could tell us, I mean, if you don't mind, what age are you? Where are you in all this? Like, are you?
Yeah. So I'm 23 at the moment. I'm still in uni, so I'm studying med, which is busy. And I have been with Reach Out since I think 2020. I've been volunteering as a youth ambassador. What that basically means is that like if Reach Out wants to get a message out, whether it's like internally or with external organizations, and they kind of ask me, they're like, hey, do you want to share your story? Do you want to tell us what you think about this? Do you want to talk to these people directly? Gary was kind of talking about it earlier with how central youth lived experience is to Reach Out. And I think it's pretty cool that a position like this even exists, because it's like, hey, you can come in and we want you to talk to these people because you're the person who gets it the best. And like that's amazing. I don't want to say I'm the person that knows the best. There's a lot of other ambassadors here, of course. But like the point remains, like the fact that that kind of position exists, it's really cool. What Gary was saying, I completely agree with you in terms of the social media stuff. Like we were talking to a couple of news media outlets recently as well, and I'm definitely on the side of like we need more education, because you can pretend that it's an age thing and a maturity thing, but the fact is, even my mom is like addicted to Facebook Reels, like it's not like a thing that only happens when you're between ages of 13 and 16. And it's not something that's limited to even like young adults. Like my mom she's in her 50s now, and like the algorithm gets her just as much as it gets me. Like sometimes I have to tell her, Mom, stop posting these reels. This is clearly AI made. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So digital literacy is really important, and it's clear that like the issues that the older people are going through is similar to what the young people are going through, because neither of them have that education with the digital literacy. Because all of the digital literacy education that started was basically just uni students or high school students, maybe like 10 or 20 years ago. So people who are like in their 30s, they get it. All right. But people who are 10, they don't get it. People who are 20, some will get it. People who are 50, they don't get it either, right? Like nobody's gotten that education. And the only way we can bridge that gap, in my opinion, again, is like introducing more education. Like it doesn't, like we're talking about youth mental health specifically, but I think generally like digital literacy is going to be so important, because clearly these corporations aren't interested in, making it easier for us to avoid them.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, we, like our generation, we never got any digital literacy either. You know, in terms of social media, I remember there was Bebo was one of the, well, there was MSN, which was the Microsoft chat, which
Mm.
everybody was on. Then there was a channel called Mirc, MIRC, which was like an online, that ended up being very dangerous because anyone in the world could dial on, and it got a bit like there was all that sexual connotation to it. And then it went to Bebo, which is kind of the first of those real, well, MySpace was another one. But at no point in my life has anyone taught me about what you should and shouldn't do. And even as a 40-year-old today, like Instagram still gets you in the hook, as Gary said, and it doesn't even take much. You don't even have to click on anything now. If you just hover over something for more than a split second, that then logs, and then you get fed all this information. So yeah, I think that's very reassuring that that digital literacy piece is coming in, especially to the youth. And I was going to ask, like, so let's talk about numbers here. Like, is every child being impacted like this? Are you seeing a gravitation in numbers towards a certain age group? Who are most vulnerable? Is it like, you know, if you just look at, say 0 to 18, is there any kind of real danger demographic that we need to look out for? We'd love to hear some of the numbers.
I think that's more on Gary. I'm not too familiar with the numbers. I speak more to my experience usually.
Yeah, I can help you out with that. So we think the demographic that's probably most at risk is the 10 to 14. So to Azhaan's point, that's the group that's highly influenced at the moment, has access to every platform at the moment, and very little digital literacy in that space in regards to education. We also know, you know, there's about 1 million Aussies we know of that have sought mental health support in that younger age group, probably around 16 to 24, for example, where they can't access it because of lots of reasons: cost of living, rural remote, the stigma still attached to mental health. So the problem definition is still there. What age group is it that seriously is going to be impacted? It's going to be that 10 to 14 who's kind of on the cusp of. Most kids aged 12 have a mobile phone. On average, have a mobile phone. Parents we talk to attempt to regulate the mobile phone. That works sometimes, and other times it just creates an opportunity for kids to get sucked in, for a better word, into those vortexes. I think to Azhaan's point, if we were to put some humour onto this, you know, I would remember, some people remember Healthy Harold that used to go around to the schools, right? This giraffe thing, teaching kids about personal development, protective factors. And, you know, to a degree in primary school, was highly successful. I was the unfortunate person who had Humphrey the Bear, who was a bear that never wore pants, on television. Like, go figure, and we're still traumatized by that. But if you apply the same principle of that engagement with primary school kids and add the digital literacy on top, we literally need that to be around in the schools to start teaching kids about healthy habits of being online. And that starts in primary school. That doesn't start in high school, right? High school, they're already on it. They know all about it. Their friends are on it. So that age group is that primary school group. There are some really good content pieces, and we provide some amazing content to schools and teachers in particular to help talk about it. But the focus should be, if we think personal and physical health is really important, which it is, there's a direct correlation, obviously, to mental health. That starts at a much younger age.
I think it's I don't know, it's a tough one, isn't it? Like, I know 10 to 14-year-old is like that age bracket, but from a mental health, let's keep it on mental health. Like, one, we don't know the downstream, like, long-term effects it will have on a 10-year-old, 14-year-old using it. Two, we don't know how like what they were consuming at that time that maybe led to it, because some of it isn't policed as well as it could be. Then at the same time, if it is removed, which obviously some Australian or the government's trying to do at the moment, what will the knock-on effects will that be from a mental health perspective? Because they'll feel even more isolated because they can't connect, like you suggested, they can't connect with their peers, or they can't. Maybe some of them do rely on that support, or not even support. Maybe they just find a bit of peace in something they watch online or whatever it might be, someone they connect with. It's just a tricky one, isn't it? It's such a tricky one. I mean, from a mental health perspective, everyone's different as well. Everyone's wired differently. Everyone's had different experiences, different home life. So I don't know, it's a crazy one. But I suppose from a neuroscience standpoint, there's obviously going to be like some like core principles that this is just the human brain. This is how it works and how it's going to be wired. I don't know the consequences of these 10 to 14-year-old people, kids not getting that access. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, good or bad, or do they fight back? Do you know what I mean? And find, like we all did when you were told you couldn't do something, you find that loophole, which they will.
And because I was going to ask as well, outside of, we talked about social media, you mentioned finances as well, Gary, and maybe Azhaan, you can jump in here. Outside of
Mm.
those two, would there be another one or two things that the youth of today are facing that's impacting their mental health specifically?
I think finances is a big one, honestly. Like there is like the social media pressure, of course. There's finances. I know I'm like working usually like 14 hours a week on top of my university commitment. For context, like the last couple of weeks, like it was like really bad because I was in the hospital doing like a research project. So literally every day I wasn't at the hospital. Keep in mind I was in the hospital for like 10 hours collecting data, analyzing data. Any day that I wasn't in the hospital, I was working, you know. And that was like just something that I had to do because I couldn't get out of work because I needed work. And even on top of that, like I was running some numbers recently. I've only done 3 years of uni at this point, right? And to pay off my student loans right now, if I contributed $500 a month from today, it would be paid off by like 2032, right? And I'm a student and I have 2 more years of uni left. So that it's not looking too great for me. And $500 a month, I know it might not sound too much to like an adult income, but for me, that's a decent amount of money, you know. Like I'm not, I don't want to be putting $500 a month towards something that's gonna take so long to pay off. It's a bit concerning because then it makes me think of like, okay, well, this is the smallest loan with the best interest rate I could possibly get in my entire life. And the next step is going to be getting a mortgage. Am I going to need to pay that off? Of course. How long is that going to take? All of those things. I think they really add up because it makes me, I don't know, it just makes you feel like scared, like scared of like, okay, what's going to happen next? Am I going to be able to be cut out for this? I think I'm somewhat fortunate in the fact that I do medicine because at least like for the most part, my pay should be fine. But then I think about like everybody else who's doesn't have like the job security that I'm gonna have, which is like as soon as I graduate, I will get a job, right? Like that's guaranteed to me. But nobody else really gets that, right? So how much harder would it be for those people?
Yeah, I remember when I was going through
Yeah.
uni, all the lecturers told us, because I did business studies with cultural arts, all the lecturers saying, there's no jobs in this industry. That was what we were told the whole time. And then I ended up like having a love for the arts, but didn't go down that route because jobs were so few and far between. Like, you know, like you might have one position in the NGV, but then you've got 500 people competing for it, you know? So we all had to just, I mean, in the end, I think that creating that creativity was the best thing ever because now I'm kind of an entrepreneur and kind of a lot of my uni friends in my same class went down that route. But yeah, you're dead right. It's definitely worrying for people who maybe don't have that job security, you know.
But on the flip side, just to play devil's advocate, you could still make an argument like with these kids having such amazing access to all these opportunities and AI as well, especially at a young age. Kids are fast learners like sponges. You are like I personally know kids. I work with a lot of youth footballers. Some of them have got very good income for kids. They're selling like they're swapping out sneakers from all over the world. They've got clothing brands. They've got their own little personal brands. They've got YouTube channels. They're monetizing things. They've got TikTok channels. Some are bringing in like 6 figures a year
Yeah.
doing this crazy little thing, and that is, I mean, taken away from the traditional route of uni job, medicine, law, etc. I understand that because it's like a direct path. But like to Neil's point of a business studies or a sociology degree and all those ones that like you don't really know where you're going to end up with it, unless it's a direct route somewhere, then a lot of the kids now are almost just going, do you know what? I'm just going to create something online, and it's not as simple as that. I know not everyone's got entrepreneurial spirit, and not everyone's going to be successful. But I think if there was ever a time for people to get on top of finances and make more money than they could even consider, that there's no better time in the whole history of the world than right now. So they do have, if you're trying to put a positive spin on it, and again, I'm just playing devil's advocate, there's negatives to this, and there's like there is to everything, like there is to university, debt, etc. I think this is especially this year, the next couple of years with AI coming in, it's probably the biggest opportunity for anybody, adults included, to get on top. It's like my parents, for instance, going through the internet.com era. Like when .com came around, people were too late almost. But I feel like right now the AI era is still a few years away, like 3 or 4 properly. So now we are so early that people, like these kids who are 10 years old, 9, 11 years old, coding, we're on top of it, knowing how to use it, versus the guy who's 54, who's grafting away every single day. He's not going to go and learn coding and all the rest of it. By the time that kid's 14, 15, he's probably get a nice wee income online. He's probably took over half this guy's job roles, and it's going to happen to not everybody. But I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel in terms of financial, because there's going to be more. The money's there. People are going to make it.
Do you reckon, Azhaan, that people might take it back in their own hands? Like, let's say if it was you, let's say if you were transported back to your 16-year-old self, right? So you're nearly finished school, AI is on the horizon. You've got a choice. You got to go to uni, go into debt, or a group of your mates come together and go, hey, we've got this idea about let's disrupt the laundry industry and create some cool new app. Like, do you think kids of the future will be in that scenario? And do you think people will rely less on the university pathway?
Well, I think, sorry, just to interject, I'd like to hear Gary and especially Azhaan's opinion on this, but I think it goes back to your environment again, because Azhaan, say all his mates are doctors, on like they've got a passion for that, or maybe their families in medicine, and he's like set on becoming a doctor. Then 3 of his mates come up to him and say, "Oh, let's try this new passion project, like disrupt one." He might be like, "Nah," because my environment's always been that. I want to go down that route. That's what I want to become. Whereas somebody else might not have that option. They might have never been interested in it and be like, "Do you know what? This is exactly what I need. I need something like this. This motivates me. This inspires me." I think it would come back to who your friends are, what you've been involved in, what your own life experience has been, what your current situation looks like. Because you could be a desperate situation where you get that buzz of, oh, this new venture can make me all this money, and you get involved in it. But I think the opportunities will be there, to your point, definitely. And I do think with the media attention of university, and to Azhaan's point, he's telling his story just now of he obviously wants to be a doctor, he wants to be in medicine, but he's getting the downside negative effects of, I've got this debt now. So what do I do there as well? So that's someone who's going into one of the most highly respected jobs in the world, being a doctor, and still having that fear of like, oh, can I deal with this? I mean, so I don't think there's a right answer, a right avenue. It's just there's so much context specific, and again, Gary and Azhaan will have their own opinion, but that's just mine.
I think you
Yeah.
brought up a good point about environment. Like, I think culture plays a huge part in it. I know,
Yep.
like, for me, culturally speaking, like, going down the pathway of medicine is like a big thing. Like, my parents, they're not doctors, obviously. They were migrants. My dad's in IT. My mom works as like an admin staff. But like for them, it was like really important that I did medicine because it had cultural value to it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
it's about like what the job represents to them from their backgrounds, and then that's kind of instilled in me in a way. That's not to say that like I also don't have my personal wants for medicine, but like there is that cultural aspect there. And I think the point that you bring up about entrepreneurship, it's a really good point in terms of like the fact that there is a lot more financial opportunity that people have, especially young people, because they're at the forefront of that new technology, right? But there's like an inherent point of privilege there too. Like the people that have access to this technology are the people that are well off. The people that have the time to invest into an entrepreneurship position or anything like that are also the people who have more time because they're not working a second job alongside uni. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
I get, I
like,
get it. Only
uh,
again that some people. What I would say, if that some people, again, I'm going to people I know, young people like 16, 15, or
yeah, yeah,
16, say 17, they are working. So they are working 1 or 2 jobs. They play football as well. They go
yeah.
to school or planning to go to uni still, or maybe they're not planning to go to uni. But they have these, I'm not going to say full entrepreneurship, like running a big company, but they've got these little side businesses. Like they run events, or they trade clothes, etc. And like every entrepreneurial journey, some of them fail and make nothing from it, and it is just an Instagram account doing nothing. But there's many of them who are making comical money, like comical, like
Yeah.
double, triple what a doctor makes. And you're going, like, what is going on here?
I have a friend
I'll
who
tell
like
you,
sells sneakers and he's making so much money as
I'll
well.
tell you a
He's like,
story. When I used to work at the
yeah.
advertising day, we used to work with a lot of gaming. We had gaming websites, and we ran a campaign for this Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you guys know it. And there was this like 16, 17-year-old kid in New Zealand who was like the Asia Pacific, like, champion of that. And we actually didn't realize this until we did the campaign. This is going back 5 years ago, right? So it's just like imagine what it's like today. But the crew went to New Zealand, shot the kind of feature piece on him, and he told them as they were talking to him that he was traveling around the world playing all these international tournaments, and his mum didn't even know. So he would say he's, going to stay with his friend for a weekend, and he'd go to Singapore and play in this tournament. And he was putting in six figures, and he's winning all these competitions. And then he told us when we were chatting to him that he was going to tell his mom he wanted to drop out of school because it was such a lucrative pathway for him. Now that was shocking to me to go, oh my God. But then, like, is he wrong? Like, if you do have the skills and the opportunity arises, as Gary was saying, should he pursue that? And is he right to pursue that? It was alarming that his mum didn't know about it, obviously, and he's under 18. But yeah, what do you guys think about, like, is there a right or wrong answer to something like that?
I think time will tell. If you look at some of the most influential CEOs globally, and you look at where they came from, some of the most successful billionaires in the world never went to uni. They found a passion in something when they were kids, and they just held to it. Some of them didn't complete their schooling, and look where they are. I think to Gary's point, I actually agree that I think AI and the digital space will create opportunities for kids who ordinarily wouldn't have the opportunity to go to TAFE or to uni or to tertiary education, because it is such in their world that actually don't have a choice. They're using it already. If you're teaching coding at the age of 8 and 10, then the opportunities are going to exist. If you try and say, what does the world look like in 10 years' time, is going to no way look like what it is right now. It will be further advanced, and the younger generation will want jobs that are not your traditional jobs. And I think to Azhaan's point, you may very much have a market shortage of essential workers, doctors, lawyers, because in fact, to Gary's point, where the money is, where the excitement is for some, is back in this digital space, and they can all do it, and they don't need that tertiary qual because they're learning it at school. So I think there's, like Canva just laid off, I think, 12 or 13 staff because AI's just replaced their content, for example. So unless those people, embrace AI, for example, to find, well, what is the job that's going to forward me? It's not content anymore. So what is it? So
I've seen Shopify. I think I've seen something similar. Shopify have said they're not taking any more hires on unless that person can do what AI can't, which is basically not finding any.
So you either harness it, embrace it, and learn it, because that's where the opportunities will be for some, not all.
Yeah, of course. But same as internet, though, isn't it? Same as internet when it came out.
Yeah, it'll definitely I think it'll give kids a step up that, just as I said before, might be those vulnerable groups that will never have those opportunities to actually do really well, just because kids are so smart these days, like so smart online. Like, I think, the old generation would struggle with some of the stuff that they can do. I saw a kid the other day in one of the schools create an app from a code using an AI in 5 minutes. He actually created a mental health anxiety app. He said, read the content.
Wow.
He had an app that creates a code. He created an app literally in 5.5 minutes, right?
Can I hire him for my business?
There's loads of sites. Like, one example's Bolt. There's Lovable. There's a few different AI sites like that. And I'm the same. Someone showed me this and I went down a rabbit hole maybe about 6 months ago with AI, and I quite like. I'm going to say I'm pro learning AI. Like, I feel like it's coming. There's nothing I can do about it. I need to either get on the ship or I'm screwed, basically. So I've been down a rabbit hole with it. And same to your point, like maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that, someone showed me a site, and I'm like, I'm just going to mess around with it. And I made this like little performance dashboard, like health, wealth, and excellence. And I think 5 minutes has been generous. I literally typed a prompt, and like most AI things, it's always good, like put shit in, get shit out sort of thing. So as long as the prompt was decent, it gave me an amazing UX of this dashboard. You could gamify it, you could edit it, and if it looked crap, you just put something else in it. It says, okay, fixing that now, and it just changed the colours, put your branding in it in minutes, man. It was wild. Even the coders, they're learning coding. You don't really need coding soon. Because AI's doing the coding for you.
I will code it, yeah.
It's exciting, scary, wild, mind-blowing.
Gary, if I can ask a question, so we've spoken about a few things there. If you were kind of just to wrap all that up, what are the knock-on effects of this So what are those things that are impacting the youth? So is it, you mentioned loneliness as one, of course you might imagine something like depression or, suicide is obviously like way, way down the spectrum. But I mean, what are the types of things that are manifesting as a result of all this pressure?
Yeah, so I always throw Black Dog Institute into my conversations because they do some great research with young people. But, you know, 10 years ago in 2010, they surveyed 6,000 young people about what are the top two diagnosed mental health issues for them. In 2010, it was social anxiety and depression. Fast forward in 2022, another round of around 4,500 young people across the country, the two same issues were present: depression and anxiety. And what was really interesting in that, as a consequence, is why, and it would take 12 years on average for a young person to get help. And we're going, why is it taking so long? And it is back to our earlier discussion about these things manifest much earlier on in a young person's life. Notwithstanding that kids, we all get stressed, we all grow up and we become resilient. But there are red flags that kind of prop themselves up at 5, at 8, at 10, and at 12. And we seem to be ignoring them as a population because we think they're normal. But in fact, you asked me what are the two kind of lead-on effects from this is we're still trying to grapple with depression and anxiety in society for young people. That is a manifestation that clearly accumulates over time. So we need to look at, again, how we educate young parents in particular about what are the signs and symptoms that are not normal. What is it being fed by social media? Is it genetic? Is it issues at school? Bullying's a great one where if you're resilient, you can deal with it, you talk about it, great. But there's a group that doesn't, and it manifests itself into high levels of anxiety and significant levels of depression. And so we're still as a country really grappling with, was depression and anxiety around when we were kids? Probably.
Yeah.
We just didn't talk about it. And we as young men and women, or as older men and women now, we're dealing with that. Like psychologists are booked out to the nth degree, psychiatrists are booked out. And sometimes you don't need those people too. Sometimes you just need to be able to talk to someone to get help, right? They're the things we should be saying to young people, going, if you're concerned, or if you're a parent, you're concerned, there are so many avenues. Reach out. You can call, text us. We have parent carer coaching where it's free, that you can talk about it. It doesn't mean it wasn't always there. It's always been there. It's just there are external factors now that are exacerbating, for a better
What
word.
are those external factors? Maybe Azhaan, you can jump in. Like, what are the barriers to entry? Because often, especially with the youth, right, you hear of all these harrowing stories about kids being bullied online and social media, and their parents don't even know. So, what are the barriers if you are a 12-year-old and you're getting bullied? What are the barriers between you and seeking help, or you and speaking to your parents? Because sometimes they don't even make that first step. So, how do we get through to those?
Speaking to my own experience, when I was 12 and I was being bullied, I think the main reason I didn't talk to people was because it's just embarrassing to admit that kind of stuff. And I think that's especially common in a male sphere. Like asking for help is like a lot harder when you're a guy. You don't want to come off as the person that's like, "Oh no, this is getting to me." Because that's half the reason you're being bullied to begin with, right? Because it's like if they're calling you emotional and then you feel sad about it, then you're just proving them right. To an extent, there is also like a cultural factor there. Like for me, I know that cultural background wise, mental health is a bit taboo. So talking about that with my family wasn't really an option. And then again, like it wasn't an option with my friends because I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of them. I didn't want to come off as lesser. So it kind of leaves the only option as, okay, somewhere where people don't know me, somewhere where I can just talk about what's going on without any sort of implications in my real life. And that's online.
And does that voice, or does that ear, I suppose, in terms of someone listening, does that hold more weight, Gary, or equal weight or less weight than, say, a loved one? So your mum or your dad. Is it more important to get that ear, or where does it fit in that mix?
say being able to talk to someone is like the first and best step. So whether, we know young people often do talk to their parents and carers, but their next step is talking to people in their own community online, for example, because they feel safe and they can do so because it's natural to have that communication. And also, there's this issue where people think just because they've got an issue that they need to see a psychologist. Actually, talking is the first step. So, you've got an issue you need to talk about. Then the next step is, well, so what? What can we do? And, we always say to parents, the best thing you can do is if someone opens up to you, if it's your son, your daughter, or a friend, just like stop and listen. Don't judge. Don't jump to a solution, because as parents, we all do this. Like, how can we fix it? Actually, they're not asking it for it to be fixed. They're just asking to listen to what they're saying. And if your young person's not in crisis and they don't need medical help, then there's that conversation about find the right place, the right time to sit and have a chat. I heard a great story the other day, and I think we've all been subject to this, is we had a mum say, the best opportunity I had of talking to my daughter when she was going through a serious bullying in school was in the car on the way to school, because she had a captured audience. She didn't want to get out of the car. She couldn't get out of the car because mum was driving, and they had no choice but either not talk or talk. But in fact, then all these other parents said, oh yeah, this car conversation is really a great way to just start talking, because you can't go anywhere and you either respond or you don't. And it doesn't work for all parents, right? But that acknowledgement of just listening and not jumping to a conclusion, like it is the biggest win for a young person to open their mouths, first of all, to Azhaan's point, and then talk. It is the biggest win. Movember released some great data the other day to say young men and boys don't want clinical models of care in the mental health space. They just want collaboration, community, and conversation. The 3 C's. That's it. That's it. And that's young boys. So, that talking, I still think is just the best opportunity for a young person to get help.
Mhm.
And if you're a parent, so if you're a
Oh,
parent listening to this, let's say, and you have a concern, maybe your son or daughter has not voiced that yet, do you have any advice then to those parents? How do they delicately address a concern that they have? Like, where's the first step for a parent, let's say?
I think the first step, and it's a big one, is always at least try to ask if they're okay. And it's such a liberal sentence that's put out a lot, but it's the way you ask too. You don't just say it in passing. If you can see that your young person is troubled, sometimes whilst they may not want to talk to you, they want someone to ask if they're all right, and they want someone else to make the first move. So as a parent, I always suggest just ask the question, but ask it in a meaningful, right place, right time way. And if it's not the parents, then talk to the friends, because maybe it's the friends who know a little bit more than you do. Yeah,
And
when
if you do ask that question and let's say they're not really playing ball, are there any telltale signs, both body language wise or behavior, that you see quite often come up as common red flags for a parent to watch out for?
there's some big ones. One is actually that social isolation. So really not socializing with friends anymore, not talking, spending a lot of time in their rooms, a lot of time on their phones. All the things that are distracting from the problem are the signs and the symptoms. Complete withdrawal, not eating, not willing to engage in any conversation are all signs. And your young people best. I always say these are just some really typical signs that you should try and engage upon. Yeah, Azhaan, I don't know if you have any more from a young person's perspective.
I think like social isolation is a big one. It's just when you stop it's almost like you stop trusting the people around you to be able to help. So then you try to find like help in your own circle. So you just hide away from it. And I think that's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it's scary. It is scary to think, because when Gary and I were young, I remember my dad telling me during the summer in Europe, it wouldn't get dark till 10 p.m., pulling us off the street at 10 p.m. by the ear because we didn't want to come, wanting to stay out and play. And when I go back and visit Ireland, the estate that I grew up on is like a graveyard. There's no kids, on the street anymore, and that is kind of scary. And here it's gaming in places like Korea where parents can't get kids out of the bedroom. They've got to put dinners under the floor. They're going to the toilet in the room because they won't even leave the room it is very scary. But not to stay too much there. If we were kind of finishing on a high and success stories. Maybe Azhaan, you could tell us maybe a little bit of your own story, or like what are the types of success stories that we're seeing from the work of Reach Out and what you guys do?
Yeah, I can talk a bit about my success story, I guess. Like mental health wise, I guess there isn't really a starting point. You know, it's like, oh, when did you start having mental health? That's not really a question that exists, right? Always kind of had it. We've talked about isolation a lot today, and I remember back in high school, I there was like a really strong sense of isolation there. I felt like I was the only one that was dealing with like the study stress or the anxiety. I went to a boys' school as well, so you can imagine like how much harder it was to talk about that stuff. But when I look back on it, I can see that there were so many other people in my grade who were going through basically similar things to what I was going through in terms of just feeling isolated and needing someone to talk to. But just like me, I think none of them really knew what the problem was or how they would even begin talking about it. And then no one knew how to look for it in other people either. So everyone thought that they were going through it alone. I think the biggest step that I ever took was like finally talking to my friend about the stuff that was bothering me. And I kid you not, it took me until the final day of year 12, like not even like what do you call it? Like after trials or like after your HSC. It was like farewell day. And then everyone else was running off to Gary knows the story. Everyone else was running off to see like a boxing match between two of the students because again, it was still a boys' school. But I pulled my mate aside. I was like, "Hey, can you stay behind with me? Can you have a chat?" And he said yes. I didn't expect him to say yes because I think at that point I had convinced myself that no one would, right? But he said yes, and then he just talked, I talked, and he just listened, and he talked and I listened, and we walked around together. We kept talking, kept listening. And I think like obviously mental health doesn't end when you talk to someone, right? There's a whole journey that comes after it. But once that first step was taken, it made everything else so much easier. Because like I went from someone who'd never talked about my mental health issues, talking to one friend, and then 6 months later, I was volunteering at Reach Out. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the pathway I took. And I think it's just so empowering when you realize that things can make a difference without fixing the problem. Like we get in our head that like, okay, help is the most important thing. Help is the most important thing. But it's not necessarily the help that the people need. It's like they need to know that their emotions exist. They need to know that what they're feeling is real. And then they need to know that there's something they can do for themselves as well as for other people. And then like the help will come. But first step is just making sure that like you're open to it. There's no way to be open to it without opening yourself up to begin with.
Brilliant, mate. Love that.
That's class, mate. Brilliant. That's a good message. I think that you don't have to try and solve it. There's just other things to make things a little bit easier. I think that's like a great like tagline for this episode in general. I think it's a really good message.
Yeah, because you don't have to like. I think we need to flip the switch on it being always a bad thing, mental health, and even the things that do impact you, like even the things that I've spoken about with me. I don't see them. I try and not see them as negative things anymore. They're just part of my journey, and then you adapt and you bring in tools, and they also can be your like what you call it, your superpower. You know, you can actually use it for good, which you've obviously done with Reach Out, which is amazing. And Gary, like, what does the future for Reach Out look like right now? Are you looking to expand content, digital? You've got your app. Like, what's the short term and long term plan for you guys?
Yeah, look, our long-term vision is to be able to, in essence, scale and be more accessible across the country to young people. Part of that's through our digital approach, where we are using AI pathways to help navigate young people through good content from trusted sources. So the amazing thing about Reach Out is our brand is a great trusted source. So we want to make sure that we have that reach and engagement with young people around the country, but also acknowledging that we meet them in their world, right? So we'll go to them in various social media channels and platforms with really good digital content that is written by young people that's really proactive. We also want to make sure that we support our parents and carers in the most relevant way we can. And I must say, success to me, I think to Azhaan's point of the future isn't, because mental health is a journey and you should really see it from a strength-based approach. But when you see the engagement on peer chat, for example, online, and you can see so many people accessing it and they're getting really positive affirmational type help, that is success. That engagement to me is success. Having young people being able to open their mouths and talk is success. Harnessing AI and the digital world will be our success. So we need to go where young people are, and part of that's realising that it's now in the digital space, and we need to support young people and parents and carers in that digital literacy as we go forward.
How did you find out about ReachOut, Azhaan?
Funnily enough, I actually found out through one of the market research campaigns they were doing. So they were like, "Hey, do you want to come review our website?" I was like, "Okay, for sure." And I reviewed the website. I was like, "Wait, this is kind of cool." And then like a couple of days later, I was looking at like volunteering opportunities with them. I remember it was super daunting because I didn't actually want to record the 1 minute video that you have to send through to be a youth ambassador. I was like, "Oh no, a whole 1 minute of me talking." But I'm glad I took the step because like I've been with these guys for so long, and these guys have been amazing. Like they're some of the best people in the world, I would personally say. And one thing I love about them is they're always centering, like Gary was saying this literally earlier, they're always centering like how do we meet young people where they are, like because that's the most important thing. Like you can set up like a stall in a workplace about mental health, but a young person isn't going to be there. They're going to be at school. You need to meet them there. Or if they're going to be online, you need to meet them there. Funnily enough, even in like healthcare, like we're just starting to realize that. One of the research project I'm literally working on is about how we meet people where they are and how we can make that better. So I think it's great that we're doing that in mental health too.
Amazing.
What a nice message, mate. Nice message for Gary here, I'm sure, as well.
I know, that was
Uh,
thinking that, like,
to,
reach out, we'll meet you there. Like, I love that.
well, just to sort of wrap up where we're at is we do a quick fire round where we ask at the end of episodes. We just ask very one word answers pretty much just to get an idea of where people's heads at with mental health. So, Sully, do you want to run them through the questions? There's only three
Yeah,
questions.
there's three questions. So, like, Gary, you answer, then Azhaan, and then we'll go on to the second question. So, Gary, where do you think the world is out of 10 in regard to mental health awareness right now?
6.5.
7.
7. Slightly better? Any reason why?
Everyone's talking about it. Like I think everyone's talking about it. It's
In
everywhere.
your environment, mate. In your environment now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Not in our
That's a
parents'
full circle
environment,
there.
no one talks about it.
Yeah.
And Gary, where are you specifically out of 10 right now in terms of your own mental health?
Mental health, I think, would be around a 7.5 or an 8.
Yeah. After that assignment yesterday, I'm at 8 today, so it's good.
Good.
Right, that's
Solid.
awesome. And then finally, if you could recommend one thing to do just in a single day to improve your own mental health, what would that be?
Words, actually walk and talk. That's it. Walk and talk.
Right.
Yeah. I actually like throwing a ball and talking. I find that it's really nice to fidget. So
Ah,
Actually, just thrown up in the air.
yeah, just or find a wall. I
Yeah,
love
okay.
the wall in my bedroom.
Yeah, cool. Aye, that works as well. Aye, simple things usually. I actually seen a thing the other day that was about walking. It was like showed you the chart of what happens from a neuroscience standpoint each minute. Or not like 1 to 60, but like 15 minutes, X happens, blah blah, and by 45 minutes, it was almost just like your brain had been completely reset.
Yeah.
And then by 60 minutes, it's like complete creativity. You get almost into like a flow state of creativity. It's nuts. It's so simple but so effective.
it's something I talk about a lot in the wellness game, and I shouldn't say it because it goes against my own business, but you can have the highfalutin gym memberships and machinery and saunas and things like that. But literally 10 years in the wellness industry and speaking to all the guests that Gary and I have spoken to, nearly 50 plus people, when it comes down to it, especially in that last question, it's always the most basic things that mean the most to us. It's not, was doing a triathlon and things like that are great. It's usually the small, simple things that
It's
really
always been, I think the most common answers we've had is walking. So maybe walking with dog or walking,
in nature.
walking in nature or exercise. It's been literally those two have been like I'd say 80% of the answers.
I was just thinking when you were talking about walking in the distance and then unlocking things, like, do you get past 50 minutes and you're in that like limitless zone? You're like, oh, I'm coming up with ideas now, quick. Get
Depends
on.
where you're walking, mate. Aye.
Control it.
Well, some people walk faster than others. I walk really fast, but some people walk really slow, which really annoys me. When you're walking with someone who's much slower.
Yeah.
Stressful walk.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love. Thanks so much, guys. And, like, how if someone's listening to this, be it a parent or a school or someone of Azhaan's age, how do they reach out to you guys? Excuse the pun.
Eventually can get online to reachout.com and find us there, or that's the best way to find out about us. It's very easy. All our services, our content, and direct links to our peer chat, for example, that they can access, all online.
It's a very, very good user experience on the website. All pretty much, you cannot not know what you're doing. It's all color coded and very clearly well laid out. So,
also really fun. I think the website's super fun.
Yeah. And what about you, Azhaan? Like, I mean, can people book Azhaan? How does that part work?
Dude, honestly, my friends have to do that. They have to like email me to ask when I'm free to hang out. So I don't offer my services. I'm just a normal person, but I know that.
I meant more like ambassadorial wise. Are you out there speaking to schools and uni?
Oh, usually not, because I'm super busy. I think this is literally like the second time that I've ever shared my story, because I also get very nervous in public. But
mate, Neil's trying to help you pay off your uni debt here. Trying to give you a new source of income.
Maybe that could be the move.
Your fourth job
AI.
No, I mean, you're very easy to listen to, Azhaan, and hearing your story is very admirable. So thank you very much for sharing. We need more of you and more of it. You know, if we did, I think we would be facing a lot less issues. You know, so well done.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks very much for both of you. Absolutely unbelievable work what ReachOut are doing. Obviously, there's a couple of other people you've mentioned, Black Dog Institute, Movember, there's Batir. Phenomenal people involved, phenomenal mission. A mission that is never going to end, unfortunately, but one obviously that makes a big impact in. So keep doing what you're doing. We'll be watching. Hopefully, other people who are listening can jump online, maybe review the website, maybe talk to someone, maybe do whatever, but get involved any way you can, or at least share it with someone who might find it valuable.
And if it's any kind of litmus test to go by, you know, I didn't seek help personally until I was well in my mid-30s, you know, and I've been on a kind of 8 to 10 year journey. So I only tackled this when I was 31, 32. So I was already so far behind the 8 ball. So it's a testament to what you're doing, that if you're getting into kids' hands, even at the age of 5 or whatever it may be, you're 25 years earlier than what happened to me. So that has to mean something good. So yeah, as guys said, well done, keep it going, because you're providing a really needed service to, you know, everybody.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take it easy. See you later.